I'm a brand new sky to hang the stars upon tonight. I'm a little divided. Do I stay or run away? Leave it all behind. Give again. It's times like these learn to love again. It's times like these, time and time again. It's times like these you learn to live again. It's times like these live again. It's times like these you learn to love again. It's times like these, time and time again. It's times like these you learn to live again. It's times like these you give and give again. It's times like these you learn to love again. It's times like these, time again.
What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Tatted Up X, and this is Ink Therapy. Today, we have the privilege of interviewing the one and only Shane Baker out of New Haven, Connecticut. His Instagram is at Shane Baker Tattoo. Again, he's located in New Haven, Connecticut, so make sure you go check him out. So, Shane, tell me a little bit more about how you got started tattooing.
So for me, like I've always drawn since I was a little kid, like 4 or 5 years old. I was drawing with pencils and pens and stuff. And I went to art school after high school, and then I didn't graduate because art school is expensive. And I was like, it's taking too long. I'm out. And I had to take out loans. So like I'm still paying those now. I was done with school in like 2002, 3. It's 18 years later, and I'm still paying these fucking things. So like, that's a thing.
Me too.
But then I moved to the Virgin Islands right out of college. I was living in St. Thomas, and I was living with a dude who was a tattoo apprentice at the time. And he was looking through my sketchbooks and my little portfolio, and he's like, dude, you're really good. Like, you should think about trying to get into tattooing. And I was like, maybe. And he actually had some cooler tattoos. Like, up until that point, most of the stuff I'd ever seen was like, I don't want to shit on American traditional, but it was like old, bad traditional tattoos, like very aged and weathered from like, you know, my uncles or like a grandfather, or like old sailor tats and like Navy ones. So they were like, first of all, they were flash and probably not done by the most talented tattooers. So I just didn't know what could be done. And then like my buddy, his name's Muggsy, he was showing me some of the stuff that he had, and it was like new school stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, he's like, yeah, this one was in a magazine before, and he was all hyped about it. He's like, we won at the tattoo convention in like Boston or something. I'm, oh, sweet. So like that kind of like got my interest peaked. And then I looked in St. Thomas. There was only 2 tattoo shops at the time, and one of them had him as an apprentice. So he got fired or quit. We're not really sure which, but they didn't want to do an apprentice after that. And then the other one was owned by a friend of ours, but she was a piercer, and her tattooer had only been doing tattoos for like 3-4 years. So I went and showed my portfolio, and she was like, this is really good work, but like, I don't feel comfortable teaching you. I've only been tattooing 3 or 4 years. And at the time, I felt like that was such a like, it was just a blow off. Like, she's like, yeah, this kid's good. I don't want him working here or whatever. But like, now I've been tattooing for like 12, 13 years or something like that. And like, I might be able to teach someone now, but 3, 4 years in, there's no way. I would have never. So eventually I left St. Thomas, went to California, looked around for an apprenticeship there. And like, this is still early 2000, like 2004, 3, 4, something like that. I went to a bunch of places and got a lot of doors slammed in my face. A lot of people were really not cool about the idea that I had been an art school kid. I think there's a lot of like working class mentality behind tattooing at the time still. And like, when I said I went to college and wanted to like, make a living doing art, and I thought the tattooing would be a good way, people were kind of looking at that like I was a rich kid or that I was privileged or something. And like, it's anything but that. Like I've worked forever. Like I've always had to like scrape and scrabble ever since I was a kid, and like I've paid for everything. I'm still
Right.
paying for it.
We were just talking about the debt.
Yeah. No
the
scholarship.
student loans.
Like me, I paid for it, and like I had some buyer's remorse on it. Like I could have got away with half the amount of money, because like my first 2 years were State College in Rhode Island. The next 2 I went to the Art Institute of Boston. And if I'd have quit after my first year, I would have 30,000 less in principal debt, let alone however much interest that accrued in the last 18 years or whatever. So like, I'm not good with math. It's too much.
It's a
way
lot.
too much. Yeah. My 2 years there cost me like roughly 60 grand or something like that. So like, crazy money. And if I went now, it'd probably be double that, because the prices have just continued to go up. So
what brought you to New Haven, where you are now?
this is the thing. Like I went from California and moved back to New England, where all my family and friends are, and I was still looking around for an apprenticeship. I went to places in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and I finally found an apprenticeship for free in Connecticut. That was at kind of like a crappy biker shop. So like, there's some things that happened there and like drama, and I got out after like 5 or 6 months. I found my next apprenticeship, which is the one that like stuck, at a place called Elm City Inc. With Christian Perez and my buddy Dave Rachi, and apprenticed for like a year and a half, something like that, and then started tattooing professionally there. And then I worked for Dark Side Tattoo, Sean O'Hara. Moved to Rhode Island, worked at Powerline with Evan Olin and the talented crew there. And then I moved out to Night Owl in Northampton and had a blast working with those guys for a few years, and now back to New Haven to work at Hope with Christian Perez again, Joe Cap, Eric Merrill, Phil Young, Tim Harris. It's a great crew, and I'm stoked to be there. Like I'm honored. Ironically, that was one of the places that I went for an apprenticeship in New Haven when I first went there. And they looked at my portfolio and were like, "Oh yeah, this is really nice artwork. Like you're very talented, but we're real busy. We don't really do apprentices. Like we don't have the time for that." And like Joe totally didn't remember me when he eventually met me, but like I assume they meet a ton of kids. I've seen a ton of kids walk into shops and ask for apprenticeships that I wouldn't remember today too. So no offense taken.
Yeah, none at all. And I love the grace that you carry around that, because that's something that we talk about frequently on this show is, just about the difficult journey that it is to be an apprentice and actually finding an apprenticeship. But that mindset will always make sure that you're going to be exactly where you need to be, as long as you're not taking it personally, understanding that so many people show up to their doors every day. And as long as you keep going,
So for me, that was one of the things, like, and I'm really glad. The first dude that I went to in St. Thomas was, he worked at Jimmy Buffum's shop, and it was, his name was Brandon something. I can't remember his last name, but he did my first tattoo a couple years before. And then my friend Muggs had been like fired or quit. And I went there and was like, "Hey man, my buddy used to be your apprentice. Can I apprentice?" Terrible way to introduce yourself. So he was like, "Oh yeah, that kid."
Especially when someone was either fired or quit.
I wasn't there. I was just like, "Oh, he knows him, so like that's a good in." And I was totally dumb.
Sounds reasonable to me.
It's experience. Like you figure
Right.
these things out as you get older.
Definitely.
And, he was like, "Man, yeah, you do some nice artwork and stuff, but like to get an apprenticeship, you're gonna hear a lot of no's before you get your first yes."
Right.
So let me be the first one.
Mm,
That's a no. And I was like,
mhm,
all right.
yeah.
And like those words were important because I went to so many places and got told no and was just like, all right, next one. Like
Yeah.
fucking kept trying, and eventually you get it. But it was, I think I didn't start an apprenticeship until either 2006 or 7.
Mhm.
And I was 6 months in it, then out for like almost a year before I got my real apprenticeship. So between starting to find an apprenticeship and actually finishing one was probably like 5 or 6 years.
Mm,
So, it's not always a like walk in and get it.
for sure.
Um, and if you
You gotta
get
work
that,
for it.
hold on to that and,
Yeah.
and make it work, you
Yeah.
know?
For sure. I definitely think that, um, I feel a variety of ways around that. I think that the first thing that comes to my mind is, um, having one of those core values of grit is like super important in this industry. Uh,
Absolutely.
However, so I'm like very thankful for that and that process and the process that um, stirs up that grit within individuals. However, I also feel a little bit of anxiety around it because I'm like, wow, if you have somebody who's asking to learn and looking and seeking help and support, then why wouldn't you? But I understand, like you said, either a shop doesn't have the capacity to, um, you know, uh, I understand things like that, but I would just hope it's not that I just want to see you struggle because then I think it's going to prove to me that you really want it. Like I can't identify with that.
That's in there somewhat too. And I think that there's like that's part of the tradition of it is that was, oh, so this is what I was dealt. This is what I'm gonna hand back to others. It's almost like its own hazing before you even start. Like
Right.
it was hard for me to get in, so I need to make sure that this kid really wants it. And that's part of why like the quote bitch work is involved in apprenticeship where they like make you scrub toilets and like wash the floors and
Yeah.
scrub tubes, which that's not even a thing anymore because everything's disposable now. So like there's so many things that you don't have to do anymore that like I did, and like there's shit that I didn't have to do that the generation before me did. Like no
Mm,
one taught me to make needles. No
right.
one taught me to like make a machine.
Right.
Uh, no one taught me how to like do a bunch of that old school stuff, which would be really cool to know. And I may still seek it out and try to learn it on my own.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I get to skip ahead on that stuff because we started to have much more like mass produced supplies,
Right.
and that's a big thing now. So like you can just get it cheaper than it sitting there making it.
Mhm.
But if the industry takes a big old dump and I don't know how to make needles, it might be good to learn.
Mhm.
I mean, not that I see it going that way because like the popularity is sky high, but usually every bubble bursts at some point.
Right. And it's not a bad skill to have in this industry. If anything, it's gonna push you forward. It's definitely not gonna be something that is detrimental or holds you back or prevents you from doing something else. If
When
anything, you have one
what
up on everybody.
what you were saying about like the banning of the inks and stuff, if tattooing ends up being a thing that gets like banned or gets changed and goes underground, that's when it's going to be important to
Exactly.
know make the stuff or to like create your own pigments or
Right.
whatever. And it might be less safe, but like drinking alcohol isn't
Oh,
safe.
definitely. I was about to say that. I was like, what are the things that we do in the modern world that are really safe?
Microwave,
Not many things.
yeah, microwave.
Driving isn't safe.
Not there's so much stuff that we do that's it's an executive decision. It's an adult
Right.
decision you make for yourself.
Right.
Having sex is dangerous. Like you can get a potentially deadly disease.
Right.
Like everything is a choice that you make. So like should leave that choice to the people somewhat as long as they're well informed. And I think
Period.
a lot of that is in the consent sheet that you sign
Yes.
at the beginning of every tattoo.
Yes. Yes. 100%. 100%. I do want to redirect just really
Oh,
quick.
yeah, yeah.
I'm super interested in knowing more about your style. I see this amazing merchandise that you have on your hat. Shane Baker original right there. Tell me a little bit more. How would you describe your style?
I kind of I do a little bit of everything. I try to be like versatile. I honestly kind of had to be when I was an apprentice. Like you just take whatever walked in because I was at a street shop. So like I learned to do just about everything. But my favorite stuff to do is usually like new school, whether it's color new school, or black and gray, or just illustrative stuff. Um, I don't know. My style is kind of just something that's been building over the years because I've been drawing since I was a little kid, and I've always been very influenced and inspired by like comics, video games, animation, monster movies, sci-fi movies, fantasy stuff. So my style incorporates a lot of those things, colorful characters and creatures, especially. Like creatures are my favorite. Um, I've got some Sphinx cats, and they inspire me. I draw a lot of wrinkly little Sphinx cat things and demons, monsters. I'm just a weird thing. A lot of these monsters and stuff springs from a childhood fear of the dark.
Oh,
I
wow.
was afraid of the dark, and my mom was an artist as well, and she got creative with a solution. She was like, what if you started to draw the things that you think are hiding in the dark, and maybe they'll want to hang out with you instead of trying to like get you? And I was
Right.
like, oh, it was like a light bulb moment, and then
Right.
like from then on, it just kept being a thing. What I really enjoy is when a client seeks me out specifically for my style. Like they don't come to you just because you do good work. They specifically want the stuff that you like to do. But it's just cool that someone is willing to take a piece of your art and display it and wear it around for the rest of their days.
Even further than that, I feel like it's an affirmation of, your soul and of the gifts that you're giving to this person. Like it's
Totally.
the affirmation aspect is probably the most powerful, right?
I would agree with that because like there's a even as long as I've been doing this, so I've been tattooing I think like 13 years or something like that. I'm terrible with remembering dates, so like I don't know my tativersary or whatever. But it's been almost a decade and a half, and I still get nervous, like anxious when I show the client the drawing
Yeah.
because like you're putting yourself out there. Like it's very personal. Like this is what I thought you were looking for.
Mhm.
How do you feel about it? And like if they shut it down, like that's rejection. Like that's as hard a rejection as you can get. That's just as bad as like asking a girl out and getting laughed at, as far as I'm
Right.
concerned. It makes it worse because it's super personal. I'm less afraid of that having been at conventions getting tattooed in my underwear or being in like contests at conventions than I am of like showing a client a drawing.
So, we talked about a little bit about these new school creatures that you're
Mhm.
coming up with. I want to know, what are your favorite products? What helps these creatures come to life as far as machines, ink preferences? Tell me a little bit more about your favorite products to use.
What I'm using, I usually use rotaries. For me, like I said, I never was taught to build a machine or really to tune one. My apprenticeship didn't include those things. It wasn't a super traditional apprenticeship. So once I started using some rotaries, all of a sudden things got easier for me. And I've used a bunch over the years, from like stigmas back in the day, neotats for a while. I get into Cheyennes, Hawk and Hawk Thunder, and a Cheyenne pen. Now, my latest ones, I'm using an FK Iron Zion and a Numa 4. They're both pen style machines, um, mostly cartridges, just for ease. Everything's disposable. Cartridges, you can switch them in and out, and I use like one machine at a time most of the time. For me, that's easier than setting up a liner, a shader, two different liners, and then like a color pack or whatever. Just use one machine, change the setting on it every time, and go at it. Makes things quick, and I tend to use probably more cartridges because I'll put out every possible thing that I might need for a tattoo instead of being like, I could use the corner of the mag to get into that. Like, nah, I'll put out as many as I need, and then bless you. Um, if I need them, I've got them. If I don't, whatever. I'd rather waste the couple of dollars that it costs to have an extra cartridge than to not have the right tool for the job.
Why not?
As far as ink goes, I've been on Eternal Inks for like a few years. I started using them when I worked at Night Owl because we had like a sponsorship. Um,
Love it.
I was using Fusion before that because my job had a sponsorship with that. So
Love
it was like,
it. Free stuff.
so if it's free, it's free.
My favorite thing is free stuff, Shane. That's something you
Absolutely.
know about me. I love free stuff.
and I don't want to, shit on any ink companies. Like, I think both of them are good. I think
Yeah.
Fusion and Eternal are fairly comparable. There's a family link because they had the same chemist for a while, which is kind of like a hot political issue in tattooing.
Mm,
But I could use either one. You can use both of them, and they mix fairly well together. I know Joe. I work with Joe Cap, and he uses electric ink, which is, I think, powder pigment, and I'm interested in using that, but I don't know about how well that would mix with Fusion or Eternal because those are both like pre-dispersed.
right.
Uh, but he uses those powder ones, and they tend to stay a long time looking really good. So I might get into that.
Yeah.
If we're allowed to going forward.
I know it. I can't wait to get into that. That's happening in just a second. I can't
Yeah.
wait to hear a little bit more about your take about that. As I was preparing for this interview, I was going through your Instagram and saw a post about when you take a picture of a tattoo time and time again, you can't get the perfect picture. So every artist knows that struggle.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any tips or advice for how you get such amazing pictures of your work?
Honestly, most of the time, I don't feel like my pictures are that good, and I'm not using the latest tricks. I have I have a history of taking issue with people that are doing like the polarized filter and the polarized light and like bumping up the contrast. And I have some fairly big name friends, and I don't want to name any names because I don't want to like throw anyone under the bus, but they do that stuff.
Right.
And I had an argument with one of these dudes, and I was like, dude, why? Like, you're already like top of the heap tattooing. Like, why do you have to like give these unrealistic expectations by using that shit and making them look that much better than they really do? He's like, I'm just making them look like they do in person. I'm like, I don't think so. Like, he's like, well, I'm getting the best possible photo I can to represent my work. I'm like, yeah, but if it only looks like that in a dark room with specifically that lighting setup and that filter, then it doesn't look like that.
Right.
You're selling a photo,
right,
but we're selling tattoos. So like, I don't want to get shitty photos of my tattoos, but I also don't want to lie about what they look like and give people a false expectation, So I just kind of clean up the tattoo as best I can, hope that the lights are good and try and focus it, usually let it rest for like 10-15 minutes if you can, if the person's not in a rush. Maybe put a little bit of witch hazel on it. Yeah, honestly, I don't really know how to get great tattoo photos. Sometimes get lucky, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, obviously you're lucky because I mean it's the your photos you have great photos on your Instagram.
Thank you.
And so, whether it's luck or just, the level of artistry, it definitely shows. But I think that that's a very interesting take to have because, like you said, the polarizers, those filters are, especially polarized. Let's just talk about that. It's just such a big trend now. And I think even maybe just like photographers in general kind of set us up for that because that's everyone wants edited photos these days. Nobody wants the photo as it came out. People want to blame it on the camera or the lighting bouncing off the lens in an inappropriate way. So now I have to fix it. It's just, I don't really know where that comes from, but I always look for somebody to blame. That's somebody you should know about me. It's either going to be myself or somebody else. So I just feel like in this situation, I'm going to blame photographers on that because I feel like that's where that trend started. Like people started being like, oh, I have this blemish here. I'm going to need that to be fixed and covered. And I need this smoothed.
It definitely started somewhat with like Photoshop being put into tattooing,
Sure.
Early in my tattoo career, Photoshop was still not super widely used, but it's gotten more and more traction. And now there's apps on your phone. Like there's a Photoshop for your phone. There's, Instagram. You can change all the levels and things like that. So like, naturally, people are going to edit it to make it look more like it looked in person. And I think part of the problem with the filters and all of that is that sometimes you're lying to yourself. Like sometimes you
doesn't
take
even
it
look like that in person.
right, you're bumping it up higher because you're like, yeah, that's how it looked. Like in your head, it looked like that. But like maybe you're just overdoing it a little bit. And like a lot of artists I don't think are doing it to be dishonest. I think they really want to get the best picture of their work. But I think sometimes it's just a bit much, you know.
Much.
When you see something that looks impossible on skin, if you can't see pores, that's an edited photo.
Yeah.
Because especially if it's a fresh tattoo, there's going to be pores.
Definitely.
You know, if you don't see any texture whatsoever, it looks super smooth. They edited the shit out of that because that's not how tattoos look. And that's one of the things that kills me. Like, you know, clients a lot of time aren't initiated and educated about how to spot a fake photo or a doctored photo. So like they'll come to you and be like, hey, can you make my tattoo glow like this? And you're like, no, they don't do that. Like they can't. And then they think they're like, oh, you're just not good enough to do it. And you're like, no, that guy's not good enough to do it either. That's just a filter. You know, clients come in, oh, I've been watching a season of Ink Master. I'm a real pro now. And you're like, you don't know anything, man. Like that's not education. That's entertainment. But like the more educated your clients are and the more they know, the better it is, you know, because then they know who to go to or who to not go to, or, you know, they can call like, oh, that dude's work is nice, but his pictures are a little bit like filtered, or the opposite. Like that dude's work looks better in person. I've seen it. The photos don't do it justice. And I get that a lot because sometimes I post a photo, you only get so many and it looks good in the phone. And then when you look at it after, you're like, I can't post this. Sometimes you have to because you don't get another picture. You may not see that client again.
Truly.
So yeah, it is what it is. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
I am interested to know your biggest pet peeve. What's your biggest pet peeve when you are tattooing someone?
One of them is a term that I got from my buddy Mike Bossino, who works at Powerline. Powerline Tattoo in Cranston, Rhode Island, in case you guys need to know. Mike Bossino, look him up. He's awesome. I've been following him since before I apprenticed. He mentioned sniffers one day, and I was like, what's a sniffer? And he's like, you know, like when you're working on someone's arm and it looks like they keep like they're sniffing at it, but they're just watching you work the whole time. And like all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, sniffer. Like that dude that keeps just like, it's weird because you're real close to their arm and then they're looking like this and it feels like you're like about to like bump heads or make out or something, and you're like, hey man, can you stop doing that? Like they're just trying to watch what you're doing, and it gets really creepy sometimes because you're that close. And you're like, man, just you can take a look when we take a break, you know, like
hilarious.
You'll see this forever when we're done, you know, just let me do
literally for the rest of your life.
They're either doing that or like every time you turn to get some ink, they'll like pick it up and look at like, like it's frustrating too because it's wasting time. Like you're making this take longer. On a client side, like I understand, I love to watch when I'm getting tattooed, but like you can only do so much. If it's your forearm, you can watch and it's not weird because they're down here. But if it's your shoulder or your chest or something and they're doing this, I'm right here, like that's just awkward. Like stop that. Don't do that.
Kiss me.
Yeah, it's very awkward.
That is hilarious. Well, shout out to Mike for that official term.
Absolutely.
What's the most challenging thing about being a tattoo artist?
Having to be creative on command. Or maybe not on command, because like if you know what's coming in, you have your time to be creative beforehand, but having to be on all the time, because like you can't have a bad day, you know. It's very performance-based job, you know. If you have a bad day doing a tattoo and it shows, then that person's stuck with that as either a bad memory or just a half-assed tattoo, and they might not know that it's bad. But if you really fuck up, then they will for sure know it's bad, and that's either a free touch-up, or it's going somewhere else, and you lose the client, and they're gonna get a cover-up, or they're gonna get laser or something. So like, you really have to be on your shit all the time, and I feel like that's the same in a lot of different jobs. You know, if you're a sports and like a big mainstream athlete or whatever, like if you're not on your game, your team loses. You know, but ours is permanent, you know, like that loss fades away. If they go and win a championship, that fucking tattoo stays there if you were hungover and you're fucked up. So like it can be stressful. honestly, most of the time tattooing is awesome and it's better than any other job that I've had. But when you have a fucking tough day, you really beat yourself up over it sometimes. Like there's tattoos that I've done that walk out of the shop that I'm not stoked about, but everybody else is like, oh yeah, it looked good. Like, and they try and help you feel better. But like when you think you can do better, sometimes it fucking sits in your head and it really like it eats at you.
Tell me about an interesting ask a client has requested of you. What's the most interesting thing a client has asked of you? Just something that you were like, I was not ever expecting that to happen in my life, but here we are.
So I think as far as placement goes, the weirdest places are usually like butts. Because I've never tattooed any dude's junk. I've tattooed fairly close to them. Like when I was very new, I had a guy come in and get like a cover up of some initials, like within inches of his like dick neck. And
Not initials.
yeah, he just, and I was like, what do you want me to, like, I don't really know cover ups. And he's like, just black it out. He's like, I can't get a blowjob from my girl until I get this blacked out. And I was like, okay. So we just did a black square and, you know, I got a high five and a hearty tip because that dude could go get his dick sucked. So,
Yes, you literally saved a life.
right. That's a public.
Jake. Tell me, what advice would you give someone looking to get their first tattoo?
Don't be cheap. Like, not necessarily that you need to spend a ton of money, but like, don't penny pinch.
I just want to stand up and do a praise dance right now.
One of the big things that kills me is when people call in and I answer the phone. You know, we have a manager, so most of the time I don't have to do that. But when I do, she's not at the desk or whatever, they'll ask like, what's your minimum? That's not a good way to start. Like if you're asking,
I already know where we're going with this, right?
Right. You're not probably going to be a great client if you're asking that. And then when people get upset about what the minimum is, they're like, dude, I really don't know what to do for you.
Yeah.
But okay, talk to you later. Go somewhere else. But yes, on that, the
mhm.
pricing thing, especially with like a face tattoo, like that's crazy. Like I can't understand you bargain shopping. If you're bargain shopping for sneakers, cool. Like go to Payless, get your $60 sneakers. But like you're gonna throw them away in a couple months or a year. Even your $300
Forever. This is forever.
face.
Yeah. So shout out to all the people who do not ask what your minimum is. It's just an inappropriate question to ask. If you're offended by it, I'm not sorry.
It's not wrong to ask what someone's hourly is. It's not wrong to try and get an estimate, but like don't be cheap, you know? Like tattoos cost money. It's a fucking luxury. Like it's not a necessity.
Yeah.
And if you want to get a good one, you're gonna pay.
Honestly, oh my gosh, you were just speaking my language, because when I'm talking to people about the consultation work that I do, it's like I don't work with people who have budgets. Probably the lowest I've worked with is probably around 500, but it's usually around 750 minimum. Because this is a luxury experience I'm curating for you. And if your budget is under that, then I'm just not the consultant for you. And that's fine. You may not be trying to have a luxury experience, and that's fine. There's so many shops that take walk-ins that have their minimum posted right there for you.
Right.
and that's your type of thing.
There's a place for everybody in the industry. So like there's people that are still learning that are going to charge less, and there's artists that maybe know that they're not the best that are going to charge less. Yes. There's people that are definitely overcharging for their work, but you know, you got to do your research. That's the biggest thing, is do your research, know who you're looking to get tattooed by, or at least know who does good work. You may not be able to get a walk-in. You know, sometimes you got to make an appointment a month in advance or a couple weeks in advance, and that's okay. It's going to be on you forever. Take your time about it. You know, make sure it's not shit.
Great advice right there. For our last question before we shift into a different section, you know, the name of the show is Ink Therapy. I named it that just because I feel like tattooing has been such a therapeutic experience for me personally, and I know that a whole bunch of people can identify with that. Mm-hmm. In what ways has tattooing been therapeutic for you?
As far as getting tattooed or doing them?
Let's do both.
Okay. As far as getting tattooed, I am a fairly skinny dude, and I always have been. And like, this is one of those things that I think people don't really think about, because like everybody thinks of body shaming as being like specifically a bigger person's experience. Like, oh, you call me fat, that's offensive. Like, as a skinny dude, I've been getting that shit for most of my life. Like, oh, eat a cheeseburger. Oh, you look like an albino Ethiopian. Oh, you're fucking anorexic. I'm like, bro, like, it gets tired. It's kind of annoying. And at a certain point, when I started getting more and more tattoos, I started becoming more confident in being almost naked in public, because like I got tattooed at a lot of conventions, so there's always people walking around and looking at you. And then like when you have tattoos, it almost feels like they're more focused on that than on your physicality. And I don't know if that's really the case, but it feels like you're wearing some kind of armor or something, and it doesn't bother you quite as much. Or you're just proud of the work you have, so you're willing to show off, you know, whatever you got. And like now, I've been just about naked at Hell City, you know, because Adrian was working on my ribs and my hip. I was wearing a tube sock on my junk and a tube sock on one foot, and that was it. So like, you know, to have the confidence to do that and not be worried about it, that's a great thing. That's therapeutic to me, is that like, whatever. I've been on stage at multiple conventions in my underwear now, and it's just like, what, that's fine.
Yeah. I love how you describe it as body armor. That really speaks to my soul. I love that.
And it's interesting too, because when I took Adrian's seminar before he ever tattooed me, he was talking about biomechanical, especially his style, as like alien armor. And I was like, I kind of like that. That's cool. And that's part of what motivated me to get tattooed by him, was just his take on it. And specifically his seminar, the excitement that he had about it. But yeah, for me, that's a big thing. As far as doing tattoos, I feel like doing most art is like meditative for me. Like I get really zoned in, and I get kind of like tunnel vision, and I forget about the rest of the world for a while, you know, to the point like I like to talk, obviously. And I could talk to my clients all day, but there's points where I just will like go quiet. And most of the time, like especially the ones that have been tattooed by me a bunch, they know that like I'm not trying to be offensive, or I'm not trying to like shut you out or give you the silent treatment. I'm in the zone. Like I'm doing what I do, and like I'm feeling it. So chill out and just listen to your music, watch a movie.
Right.
Yeah. That's it. Like I like to make art. So like even as a kid, when I would, you know, sit down and draw, it was almost like meditation time for me.
Right. We're going to take a quick switch into our tattoo news. Finally, I know the anticipation has been building up. We've been wanting to talk about it for the entirety of this interview already. But for those of you who are watching tattoo news today, the topic is the European ink ban. So the European Commission is proposing a ban. Actually, I think they didn't move forward with it, but it's a ban on harmful chemicals and tattoo ink, mostly or specifically in two widely used blue and green pigments. And so they're restricting hazardous chemicals contained in those tattoos and permanent makeup inks, because they're concerned about the increased level of, you know, toxicity after they've been injected into the skin. And so they're supposed to be considering, you know, a specific proposal in February. It's February now, so I'm sure things are moving along, but they're pretty sure that this ban is going to continue to span across the world.
Yeah, they think that it's going to cascade from Europe to us, because most things that they adopt, we end up taking on at some point too. And that's scary, especially because it will affect not just blues and greens, but other pigments that have blue or green in them, which that's, you know, probably 60%.
So many colors.
It's like at least 2/3 of the stuff that I use, especially because I love my cool colors. Green and blue is like my shit. So like, what am I gonna do? We joked before, I might just go straight black and gray if that's the case. If I can't use colors, then I'm gonna switch it up. Or
this is where we're going.
it's really scary. But I think another thing that's going on with this isn't specifically that the pigments themselves are more hazardous. It's that those pigments, when they're lasered, are hazardous. And because laser is a very lucrative industry, specifically to the beauty industry, the beauty industry has billions, like with a B, billions to spend on this shit. And the tattoo industry is small potatoes by comparison. So if them being allowed to do like micro facial lasering or
Right.
whatever the trend is right now, they don't want to lose that money. So they're going to be like, well, fuck these tattooers and we're going to ban this ink because we can put billions into lawyers to make it happen so that, you don't have to worry about, is it going to like, cause me cancer down the road if I get this tattoo lasered?
Mhm.
But like we said before, man, I think that it's an adult decision. If you want to get tattooed and you want to put harmful shit in your body, if you're already putting nicotine and alcohol into your body and whatever other drug of choice, why the fuck not tattoos?
Very
We
true.
already eat shit that's carcinogenic,
Right.
and you may or may not know that. Like, there's things in our food, whether it's preservatives or specific ingredients,
Mhm.
that are doing the same shit.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm really uh eager to hear and just see how this continues to develop, because like you said, it's scary shit. It's gonna have a huge impact on the tattoo industry. And I think it was Intense Ink specifically that they found it in. I'm not even sure why that has not been like, why didn't we figure this out before, that's just my thing. But I understand that we do the best we can until we know better, so I do have
So
grace around that, but it's
I
stressful.
part of tattooing has been that it, like, it was kind of underground before, so it wasn't really regulated, and now with the popularity that it's gained, like, exponentially in the last decade or decade and a half, 2 decades, whatever it is, it's just grown and grown so big that there are probably more young people with tattoos than without.
Mhm.
Now it's being seen by big business as
Right.
like, oh, how do we get in on this? And what I've heard or what I gather is that some of those beauty companies are going to try to manufacture their own versions of pigments, some of which will like fade out in a few years, which is not what tattoos are supposed to be for. If somebody wants a novelty tattoo and they want it to be gone in 2, 3 years, that's cool. Like, go ahead. But like, I don't think that I would be comfortable charging the rate that I charge now
Mhm.
to give someone something that's going to fade away in a couple of years. And beyond that, would I be able to afford to buy their inks? Because who knows what they'll charge for these inks, Like,
Very true.
are they trying to extinct tattooing by just changing the price and changing the regulations?
Definitely something to consider. So now for my most favorite part. We're about to transition into our game time.
Okay, I'm
So
ready.
for those of you watching, Shane and I are going to play Never Have I Ever. If you've never played Never Have I Ever, this is how it works. So Shane is going to have 10 fingers up. I have 10 questions. If he has done one of the things that I mentioned, he has to put a finger down.
All
His
right.
goal is to keep all 10 fingers up, of course, but
Wait, if I have done it, I put one down.
exactly.
Oh man,
So
this
if
is
you
this.
end up with no fingers left, no, you lose. You get nothing. No. All right, so we're gonna dive right into it. Never have I ever tattooed someone older than 65.
I lose immediately. This is gonna go bad.
Never have I ever stolen supplies from another artist's booth. Never have I ever misspelled a tattoo.
On my girlfriend, current girlfriend, but technically it was in a language that I'm not fluent in. It was Portuguese, so it doesn't really count.
Does she still have the tattoo?
Yes, but we covered. So I think it was an A, and when I do A's, a lot of time they have the little tail on top, and it was supposed to be an O. So we just kind of whited it out. We covered over the part that wasn't supposed to be there, and it's fine.
Love it. Quick fix.
And that was her first tattoo that I ever did when she was a walk-in before we even really knew each other. So like that got her to come back.
Wow, lucky you.
Good story. Yeah.
Because honestly, you could have blew that whole
Oh,
situation.
yeah. That could have gone really poorly.
That's love. It's great to hear. Never have I ever gone number 2 in a shop bathroom.
Comfort, you gotta go. You gotta go.
As long as you got the poopery and the Lysol
Yeah,
spray.
you light a candle, light a match, whatever you gotta do. Combine all of them if you have to.
Never have I ever gotten a drunk tattoo.
I've been drinking when I got tattooed a bunch of times, and
Okay,
one,
not the same thing though.
I got tattooed in Reno during a convention by like our buddy after we were all out drinking and playing CeeLo at the bar. So like I'll count that one.
Okay. What was the tattoo?
It's like one of I think my only traditional tattoo, and it's the Reno airport code RNO and the 456 because CeeLo, you know, if you get 456, then you win.
Love it. Never have I ever forgotten an appointment.
Oh, all the time.
Shout
I
out
used to
to
book
all
myself.
clients and their patients. I mean, tattoo artists are humans too, right?
Yeah. When I was doing my own booking a lot, I used to double book myself because I definitely have ADD, and when I forget to like put someone in the schedule and then I put someone else in and they both show up, you're like, oh shit, like there's few,
Duel.
yeah. One of you is gonna slap the other one, and then like whoever slaps harder gets it, I guess. That's one of the worst feelings you can have as opposed to shit, almost anything. I think the only thing I can compare that to as a tattooer is like when you're still brand new and you wipe your stencil with like water and you're like, oh shit, half of it just wiped off. What do I do now? And you just like start freaking out.
So what ended up happening? You just were able to.
Well, I mean, there's a couple times where I did just bad tattoos because I wiped off part of my stencil when I was new. But when I've double booked, usually someone's cool about it and they're like, okay, yeah, you know, I'll reschedule or whatever, or you have to like, you know, offer them a discount or something, you know, try and cover it up, make it worth their while to come back. Hey, I'll take $50 off, or you know, I don't even know. I don't remember honestly.
Well, it's very generous of you that you worked that out in that way.
Yeah, you got to try, got to help them. Good customer service.
Never have I ever copied another artist's work. That means verbatim.
So I've never directly copied another tattooer, been influenced for sure. Like I've looked at a lot of other tattooers and like, I really like the way this dude does eyes, or I like the way this dude does wings, and I'll look at it and try and dissect it. And like, maybe you kind of borrow a little bit more liberally from somebody, but like never full on taken and traced another artist's work.
Yeah. That's honestly one of my pet peeves is the full on client comes in, I want this tattoo, and the artist does that tattoo. I'm like, that's not yours to do. You can't do that.
That's a tough one too, because there's like ethics involved and shit like that. And even to the point where if a client sends me a reference for a tattoo, I'll ask them where they got the reference.
Exactly.
And if they're sketchy about it, or if I don't really trust it, I'll Google it up. And if it's a tattooer's work, then usually I'm not doing that art. You know, I'll draw it again and do my style or something. Cause like, if you're not buying another artist's flash, you shouldn't be tracing their tattoos. And that's the thing. So like, whether you go on Google, you go on Instagram, fucking Pinterest, whatever it is, if you're taking, and this is a weird area for tattooers because like people take photos all the time and they steal someone's like copyrighted photo.
Kat Von D situation.
She's in trouble for that right now. So like, I think most people won't go after a tattooer because we're small potatoes. She's got the money, so she's a payday waiting to happen.
Right.
So like, trademark and copyright work you shouldn't be taking.
Right.
But if Disney or Marvel and they're not going to come after you, I guess it's okay. Mm-hmm. But as a professional courtesy to other tattooers, like you should not be taking their tattoo designs unless you're giving something back. That's what Flash was when Flash was a thing. Mm-hmm. You would go buy someone's flash sheet from them, they gain, you gain. Right. You can then make money off of their art. Exactly. But if you're just taking someone's shit off of Google and you're fucking making money off of it, that's jacked up. Like, especially when it's a full-on custom piece. I don't remember who did it. There's a dude did like a Batman torso piece, and then there's the tattoo copycat version that some dude did on an arm, but he traced the guy's nipple and tattooed the nipple on the dude's arm. Like,
love it. Karma is a big.
That's what happens, man.
And I love it.
Rick, that's fucked up.
I even think it goes as far as like any artist, any illustrator that you see on Instagram or creates something that you would like tattooed on you. There's many illustrative pages I follow, you know, where artists are just drawing in sketchbooks or painting on canvas, where if I want to get that tattooed, I'm going to send them a message and ask for permission. Yeah, and if they send me a price, that's fine. I'm cash apping them. If they don't, okay, as long as I have their permission. But
Right.
I think a lot of people just think that there's just so much free art out there for everyone, and I think
Right.
we need to
I
nip
googled
that in
this.
the bud. There's art is not free. It's not free.
No,
That's somebody's creation, that's somebody's energy and effort that they've poured into it. Just that's somebody's career, and they deserve to be monetarily, rewarded for that. Never have I ever gone to a tattoo convention.
I've gone to a lot of them. So early on, when I was
Let's
an apprentice and first year tattooer, I was going with Christian Perez, and I was his literal like poster child. Like all of my tattoos were on his banner. So we used to do heavy on the villain arts circuit, Baltimore, Philly. Um, I think we did Boston, we did Providence. Yeah, I tend. Oh, and Tahoe. Tahoe is put on by Dats, who also does Evian. It's a good show. Not as busy as some, but like the caliber of the artists that are there and the small like intimate group of people is awesome.
Yeah.
So for myself, I'd rather go to like smaller shows full of good artists. Oh, Tattoo the Lou as well. That's a really good one with a lot of high caliber artists. Um, yeah, any show that's got like a good group of quality artists and has a more of a family feel.
Yeah.
LT Woods puts on that Tattoo the Lou, and they really go out of their way to take care of the artists. Which, Joe Cap, who I work for, was like, that used to be the standard. When you went to a show, it was like a family. They would give you dinner, they would give you drinks and shit like that, and they would take care of the artists. And more conventions don't give you shit.
Right.
Most of them, you go and you pay for a booth, and they have like cheesy bowling trophies that say first, second, and third place, and it's not even like specifically a tattoo trophy.
Right.
If I'm trying to win a trophy, I want a fucking rad original artwork trophy.
Right.
My buddy Adrian Novo did the trophies for Tahoe one year, and they were amazing. They were like original sculptures that he painted and
Wow.
like casted and molded. And then Evian Dats hires different people to do them. Jamie Riss made some one year. Same thing with LT. He had custom made trophies. Hell City's trophies are always cool every year. If I'm gonna get a trophy, they gotta mean something. And those conventions that have like the top tier artists, like if you win it there, like that means it's good.
For sure.
If you win at some like low level convention that's just got a bunch of apprentices tattooing at it and shit, like who'd you really beat?
Yeah.
What's that thing worth?
Not much of a competition.
Right. So I want to make sure that I beat some of my like famous friends or something like that.
Right.
That way you can kind of like rub it in their face.
Of course. So never have I ever let someone I'm dating tattoo me.
Never. Nope. I've not dated. I've hooked up with a couple of girl tattooers, but I've never like dated one. So like that's part of it. But like I'll be damned if I let someone that doesn't tattoo me. Fuck that. I got good tattoos on me, so like I try to keep it that way.
Yes. Let's keep the standard high. Okay, and this is the last one. Never have I ever tattooed myself.
Yes. Only a couple of times. My first time I tattooed myself was when I was working at Night Owl. We were hanging out and drinking one night at the shop, and Timmy B was starting to black out his left arm. And like some of the other guys were still tattooing, and I was like, I'm just gonna do a tattoo on myself. And I did like one of the characters from Rick and Morty on my thigh just to see how it felt when I tattooed myself. Unfortunately, I was my own worst client because that tattoo got infected to death, and it was super painful.
How'd you fuck that one up?
I had I didn't use like Sanoderm or anything, and I probably should have, but I was tattooing at a convention in Worcester, like 2 or 3 days after I did it.
Okay.
Wearing cargo shorts that had a hole in them, and my wallet was rubbing against the fresh tattoo, and your wallet's fucking gross. And I didn't think about it as I was tattooing. Like towards the end of the day, I'm working on a big long, convention tattoo. The end of the day, I was like, man, my thigh really hurts. I went to the bathroom and it was super red and irritated, and it just went downhill from there. Like,
oh my gosh, I'm so
the whole thing scabbed over, and it was like brutal. I've never touched it up either. That was like probably 3 or 4 years ago or something, and I've never gone back to touch it up. Like, man, I'm good.
But have you tattooed yourself since then?
I did. I did a little paw print on my hand here
Cute.
because my girlfriend's 17-year-old kitty Sammy passed away around Thanksgiving. So we did a little memorial. We both got little paw prints for Sammy.
Nice.
Uh,
Shout out
he was an awesome cat. So that was a total bummer, and it was sad. We needed to do something to help get over it.
for sure, for sure. This is why I love tattoos. This is why.
Yeah.
Sum it up.
A lot of them have their own little stories, and like, some of them are totally meaningless and they're just cool looking, but like sometimes it's like a very like deep personal, even if it's a tiny little tattoo, it can be like heavily meaningful. So
For sure, for sure. Well, I want to thank you, Shane. I appreciate you so much for being here, sharing this time and space with me in this critical conversation.
thanks for having me, man. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. I'm working my way up to being a somebody, but that does mean a lot when somebody like you says that. So,
I mean, anytime somebody wants to talk to me about tattoos, I'm down, and it's kind of surprising when people know me. Whether it's a tattooer or a client, or a couple of my clients have told me they've been at a bar and someone's like, "Oh, is that Shane Baker work?" A bar in Canada or fucking some other country, and they're like, "Oh yeah." A client of mine went to like Aruba in the early pandemic and was like,
Yeah.
some girl came up to me and was like, "That's a Shane Baker tattoo, right?" And I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like,
So awesome.
it's a head trip, man, because like I still just think of me as me. I don't think of me as like being super well known or famous. And like, I've only got 15,000 Instagram followers.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times some people are like, "Well, that's a lot," and I'm like, but some of my friends have like 300,000-400,000, or like, celebrities have millions. So relative to all that, I don't feel like I'm fucking famous at all. So it's just like whatever.
Well, I
I just
appreciate your
tattoos.
humility. I definitely appreciate the humility. You are definitely a major somebody to so many people. I just appreciate you staying authentic and true to the type of work you want to do, your standards as an artist, all of that. It's been a great conversation. So
Awesome. Thank you.
to the
Shane Baker Tattoo .bigcartel.com if you guys want to buy hats.
yes.
Also at Shane Baker Tattoo on Instagram. I think that's all I got.
Thank you again, Shane, so much for sharing this intentional space and conversation with me. I'm super excited for our viewers to hear what you have to say, about your take on the tattoo industry and all of the happenings that are always happening in this industry. So thank you again for coming and speaking with me today. Also, thank you to our sponsors as well. Don't forget to follow Bangin' Candles and Dark Skin Tattoo Tips. Make sure you follow me at tattedup.x and follow Ink Therapy at Ink Therapy Official on Instagram. Make sure you follow Shane Baker. His Instagram is at Shane Baker Tattoos.